I give talks so rarely these days outside of retreat. We usually have discussion periods, so our recording routine was interrupted, and I didn't want to interrupt it, particularly for this talk this morning. In case you may wonder why we're sitting in a circle, not for this talk specifically, we had a workshop yesterday and sat in here in a circle, and when the workshop was over, it occurred to me, why put the divider back in and move the mats, leave it this way, and let's try it out for a talk, particularly a small talk, outside of retreat. It's nice to sit together in a group. And also, if you will recall, these talks out of retreat are usually just 20-minute talks, and then we'll discuss together. And what I bring up today, I think, may lend itself very well to discussion. It's important. I feel it's very important. What has come up recently is that we have been questioned whether we are in a religious organization or not. The town of Springwater has questioned that. Particularly also since we changed our name from Genesee Valley Zen Center to Springwater Center. The question has occurred, why? What has happened? What has changed? Are you still a religious organization? Actually, the town felt we're not, and informed us accordingly. We'll have meetings with the town board and with Paul Hetland. But I thought it would be good to bring this up here among ourselves. What it is to be a religious organization, what it is, if there be such a thing, to be a religious person. Is there such a thing as a religious person? A religious inquiry, a religious mind? And it concerns us here because we have been questioned about this. Just this morning, Kyle and I looked up in the dictionary how religion is defined. You could say normally we don't bother about definitions, but we human beings define ourselves in terms of words and concepts. And there are consequences to the way we define ourselves and each other. So, interesting. I had read this earlier, that there is no clear established derivation for this word religion. There's question marks when it comes to the Latin word ligare or legare. One means to bind back, to bind together. Relegare, ligare is to bind back, to bind together. Do you confirm that? And then there's a question mark with regard to religion. The other derivation is legare, to collect, to gather. And neglect, meaning not to heed, whereas legare is to gather, to heed, to pay attention. That word wasn't there. I'm supplying that. To regard, to heed, not to heed, to neglect, which is not legare, which is interesting, isn't it? That both the word to bind together, to rebind. After something has gotten loose, you rebind it. Maybe in that word, or to collect, to gather, to heed, to regard. The opposite being not to heed, not to regard. And also religious was at one of the definitions defined as to be conscientiously exact, careful, scrupulous. And we know this, we use this word. He is religious about his diet. Conscientiously exact, careful, scrupulous, or doing something religiously, to be heeding, regarding what one is doing. I brought it up the other day in a staff discussion too. What does it mean to be religious? Or what does religion mean to us? One person saying to be attentive, or to come in touch with wholeness. I'll leave it to people later on to bring up what their feeling for this word is. One person said it traditionally means to believe in God, to have rituals, ceremonies, worship. One person said, I like that there is no ritual here, no ceremony. You don't have to be quote unquote religious here. In this case, referring to maybe a hypocritical adherence, or a, not necessarily hypocritical, but mechanical, an unquestioned adherence to ceremony, ritual, belief, dogma. To me, if I would just say in an extemporizing way, religion, to be religious is to inquire directly. To energies gathering to attentively inquire directly for oneself or with others, not starting from knowledge, from scriptures, from belief, but wondering openly, freely. This country is historically full of religious refugees who came from the old country, from Europe, who could not question or do what they needed or wanted to do because it was forbidden. Not just forbidden, but persecuted. So people came over here to practice in peace. I don't know whether they all were able to do that, whether there wasn't also hostility here toward new religions, new ways of expressing themselves, new ways of questioning maybe. Also, what occurred to me this morning, since usually people, or very often people ask, are you religious? Ask from their own religious point of view, which very often in this country, I think the majority of religion is Christian. Do you believe in Christ? Do you believe in God? And it occurred to me, having myself for a time in my life been a member of the Lutheran Church, baptized in that church, and studied the catechism very religiously, conscientiously, giving a lot of heed and attention to it. What impressed me at the time was Jesus saying on the cross, being humiliated and tortured, "My Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing." And at other times saying, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." And growing up in a world in which there was no neighborly love, and we did not know and still don't know what we're doing. So can we find out what we're doing so we don't nail each other to the cross? Exterminate each other, kill each other, or bring false witness against each other. We understand all about this by looking inwardly and finding all of these movements at one time or another in ourselves, potentially or actually, passively or actively. What also impressed me at the time of Jewish persecution was Jesus saying, "Blessed are those who are persecuted." I took refuge in that. I couldn't find much blessing in it. But just the idea of it was a help. And it helped partly in making me proud of being persecuted, because I'm blessed. So these were these side effects which one can observe in oneself. And yet that somebody spoke in favor of persecution. Not the persecutor, but the one who was persecuted, that gave me solace as a victim, or feeling myself as a victim and seeing solace in that. But are we operating this way? We or they, whoever is professing in these principles of love, are we operating that way? Loving our enemies, or are we constantly creating more enemies? Because the mind operates this way. It loves to create enemies, to release energy, aggressive energy against someone, so one doesn't have to blame oneself or one's own clan. So is that religious inquiry to find out what we're doing? I think it is. I feel this way. To come upon the truth of what we're doing. Creating enemies, nurturing hatred. Or is there love someplace in ourselves? Love for everyone, not just our friends and allies, but those who persecute us or drive-by shoot us. Is there love for these people as being ourselves? In a certain situation, in certain circumstances, beyond anyone's control. We may not be able to control circumstances, but can we inquire into what we're doing from moment to moment, what we're thinking, how we're talking, reacting for and against? And in this inquiry, can we come upon love for our neighbor? For everyone? Is that possible? Not just commanding it of each other or professing that this is what we're doing, but inquiring whether this is what we're really doing. And what are we doing, if not loving each other? So what is a religious mind? What is religion? Gathering, tying back, tying together, if that be the meaning of the word. Or wondering what everything is before we know it, before we have crystallized it in doctrine, dogma, and then protect that dogma which already creates enemies, because those who don't profess the same dogma are the outsiders, the heretics, the enemies. Pronouncing death sentences on someone, on people who do not believe the same doctrine. This is religious action. So-called religious action. If you don't believe, if you don't subscribe, if you question, you ought to be killed. all or most of the major religions have done that in the course of their history and are still doing it today. People in hiding because of what they have said about their religion or have been interpreted to say about their religion. They cannot live freely because they would be killed, executed. So is it of a religious nature to inquire what is going on in a human being like you and me? And whether it is at all possible to come upon a wholeness which knows no enemies, but generates spontaneously love and compassion for each other, oneself included. Another saying of Jesus that I treasured at the time I was occupied with that particular religion was, "The kingdom of God is within you. Don't look for it on the outside, it's within you." What does that mean? And if one truly doesn't know what it means, can one start from this not knowing? Inquiring, what is within? And in the beginning, coming upon nothing but words and ideas and emotions, attachments, fears. Maybe here and there a flickering of love. Let's find out. Would you like to discuss it together? Could we do that? Please.
As I've got it in my mind, when they teach theology, they always say it's not very clear.
It is so.
But mostly people go back to really God, but then they talk not, the thought is mainly that not people are bound together, but man back to God. He went astray, what is it called, this sin, the initial sin?
Original sin.
Original sin, and all this is in the background, so one has to find God. One can't say, I have found him already. One is still supposed to be searching. So that really gives you the point.
Yeah, what is God? Let's find out, not take it for granted that we know. Yes.
That's the meaning of religion, to do that. That's all right. That's not so difficult and fine. And then if you argue with people to say why you dropped Zen Center, you can always tell these people from the town that's because there are people who don't want to feel bound to Buddhism. They come from other traditions, and they are looking too. And Christians and Jews and I don't know what, everybody looking to find back his way to God. I think that's true.
Words are such obstacles, and sometimes I enjoy looking at the word religion and getting into that and wondering about that. But my reaction to the Talmud question is I'm highly suspicious that they're not interested whether or not it's religious and understanding what religion is. They're interested in taxes and they're interested in the money that this organization could be paying if they weren't defined as religious, and they are suspicious and don't know what it is, and it definitely in me I find myself feeling this anger or feeling like, how can they say this isn't religious? How many of them have come here? They're not asking, they're telling, it sounds like. So my own reactions are strong and then certainly cloud my thinking, my openness, my inclination would be, in dealing with this question, would be, first of all, to think about maybe there's some other loophole, some tax. You can be non-profit, not religious, or something, that maybe that's the crucial issue. That's the way my mind goes.
I wonder if there can be a discussion about religion with the people you go to meet. I wonder if
We'll have to see.
they can really, well, it was in my mind, if they could follow you. I was just sitting with them on the same bench, and then I thought, what do they know and feel, and where do they come from? And so I had the idea one would have to meet in the middle. That's the question.
But to start by listening to each other. Somebody may not want to listen to me, but I'm interested to hear what someone has to say. And I like to listen. And is that quality of listening, really an open quality of listening in which you don't have in mind what you want to achieve, you don't know how it's going to come out. That quality of listening itself, does that have love in it?
It has. The thing is, you are trained to listen, or you just listen, to say it shortly. I have doubts if they are really open to listen.
Well, how open are we actually to evangelical Christianity?
Funny?
I say, how open are we actually to evangelical Christianity?
To me?
How open are we to right-wing fundamentalist Christianity?
Do you know what she's talking about? She may not be familiar with that.
Just acoustically understand. Fundamentalism, how open we are to fundamentalism.
Are we really open to that? Can we really say we really want to listen and we're open to that? I would question that.
Well, I know that I listened to fundamentalism for ages, so I really do.
What is your definition, or what do you mean by open listening, John? Ortrud says, I have been listening for years.
Well,
What does listening mean, to listen?
Do we judge the other, in this case, Christian fundamentalists, as what they're saying is absurd, ridiculous?
To judge that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do a bit on my part. That it's not worth listening to the content of their words, though it may be worth taking that into account as people. And what they're saying is just, it's hard to take it seriously and to try to work with what they say.
And is there responding to the emotional charge, even listening to right-wing politicians on television, criticizing Clinton. There's such a charge with that. And in listening to Joan, I could feel the charge come up in me of what she was saying and being sensitive to that and not hearing what was actually being said. How easy it is to get carried away with the emotion of it.
So would listening, a new kind of listening, mean without emotional charge or heeding the emotional charge?
Including it.
Heeding it and yet not totally blown away by it.
I could even say that I know what I have in common with fundamentalists.
You could?
Yes.
What do you have in common?
Well, they are searching.
I was just thinking, a couple of years ago, a couple of scientists in Utah came up with something, I don't remember the details exactly, but discovering energy, big release of cold release of energy. Somebody remembers specifically.
Cold fusion.
Cold fusion, that term there. And immediately there came up a lot of emotional reaction, I think, even among scientists and so on. But how does one work with something like this that somebody says they found, a discovery, and so it seems to work out. You can listen to this and say, well, let's try it out and see whether it's the fact or not. I think this would be the way to approach, fundamentalism or other things that similarly do say we'll listen to what you're saying. It sounds ridiculous possibly at this, but we'll listen and try it out and see whether this is valid or a valid statement.
But what would any of that mean, to try it out or to find out if it was valid,
I have a colleague who's a religious fundamentalist, and I greatly enjoy talking with him. And his language is the same as mine. His language, the way he expresses things or sees things or talks about them, isn't the same, but often I'm struck that he comes up with similar or not similar. He comes up with wonderful ideas, things to do. He takes in his foster children. He's looking for the Word of God to tell him this and that, and he finds it, and then he does what it seems to be telling him. And I find that wonderful. It's not the way I would express it, but I have a great respect for his life and his decisions. I listen to him. I don't take on the same words.
I guess that's part of the thing, is you're talking about a relationship you have with someone that you know that you have some room for plenty of room for the way they are. And we're talking about what this is and what we do, again, as a group and as an organization, the same as we're talking about fundamentalist Christians, like they're a body of a fixed belief and opinion, and I'm not sure that's entirely true.
That what is entirely true.
that they all think the same, they all are the same, they all do it for the same reasons. We don't. We're not here for the same, you know. And I mean, some people saying things like, I don't have a lot of room for bigotry or for hatred. I hear it in myself, and I don't have a lot of room for it there either. But that's very different from people who are, well, I don't know how different it is. That's a good question, how different it is. From trying to sort things out, find out what's so. And I don't think, I have a lot of trouble with people who have answers, but because that means that the questions, there's no room for them. And that tightens things up. But very often when you're in a relationship to somebody, the answers kind of can tend to soften into questions out of your relationship together. But when it's like this group versus this group, or that, then that often gets lost. So I don't know what we're doing here, but I don't know that I could characterize it as one thing either.
That seems to be the problem in asking to put us in a box or out of a box. And they don't want to know what we're doing, just want to know if we're in this box, if we are religious. And it's interesting, because I at one point looked up religion too in the book, and I don't know if there was some discussion of Buddhism, the same question came up, are we religious or not? And there was the thought was in fact not, because this religion, the definition that people were using or accepting was a belief in God. And Buddhism was not, that it was more philosophy. So, and I looked in the dictionary, and there were 10 definitions. And one of them was
Of Buddhism?
no,
Of religion?
Of religion. And one was, this belief in God. And there were others. And you can go back to what is the root? Well, maybe that's wonderful to think. Are we binding ourselves together? Are we binding? Are we opening? Are we reaching? All these things are wonderful to consider. And then just coming back to this question that's being asked, I wonder about that question.
Which question?
By Springwater Town Board. And saying, a question or an answer. Which definition are they going to choose? How do they pick which definition it is? What if they say we're not religious?
Actually, to be correct, excuse me, to be correct, it was not brought up by the town board, it was brought to the town board by the tax assessors, who assess periodically every 4 years or so, and our name change hasn't happened in the last 4 years, but for some reason, see, we haven't talked enough, so we can't really, it's all speculation what's really going on, except we received a letter in which this has not been accepted, isn't that it? Our tax exempt status.
Yeah, but I would go along with what you just said a minute ago, that there's a lot of speculation going on right now, and I think my feeling is it could be helpful to talk about what religion means to us, but to sit and continue uneducated to talk about what we're going to deal with the town board and the tax assessors may not really be helpful. But I don't want to also say not to talk about it. But structure that we live in our society is all compartmentalizing things. And I guess another question that can be asked is this religious mind or what part of the original talk was about, is that in opposition to society and dealing and living with the compartmentalizing that goes on? Does it have to be in opposition to that in a way that doesn't accept it or say it's true or real? But now, I guess it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, you might not go into war because of belief or this or that, but you may yourself need to get your house reassessed or this or that. Are you going to just say, well, I don't believe in any demarcations. There's really no Livingston County. It's all just land that we walk on. You know what I'm saying? It's like, where can we kind of intelligently or in some way live in this world and kind of weave our way with what's needed to do that, not buying into things and maybe needing to make decisions. So you go to war or do you believe in one thing or another, but just sort of basic day-to-day ways. Is that in opposition to this, what we're talking about, religious mind?
I don't see opposition in the religious mind, neither do I see acceptance. But living in a more or less artificially demarcated United States and of North America, and state of New York and Livingston County, there are certain obligations go with that, and certain, what you said, bureaucratic requirements. And I have to oppose them and saying, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to pay taxes, I'm not going to take the things to the dump, I'll dump it in my backyard or so. Well, where does that come from? Opposition comes from a reactive mind, a rebellious mind, which is...
Not necessarily. I mean, you might decide not to pay taxes because you recognize that a large percentage of it is going into the war machine, or you might decide not to engage in real estate, participate in any way in the real estate industry because you don't believe that the world should be divided up into little squares and sold. And I'm not saying any one of those decisions is correct. I think we all have to find our own way, but I don't think it necessarily comes out of, it may come out of just really seeing deeply and then acting out of that. Someone like Peace Pilgrim, who just sort of walked out of the whole thing, feels to me like that didn't come out of rebelliousness, but out of really deeply seeing it and feeling like there was no choice for her.
But then do you also see that the snowplow that comes up your road and plows you out in the midst of winter has to be paid for, even though some of the money goes to the Defense Department? And who's going to pay for the dump and for the road and for the schools? You may not agree with what's going on in the schools, but you're not willing to educate your children at home.
Right, well, that's why there's no simple answer, but in other words, I don't think that anything that you do that doesn't sort of fit into the system necessarily comes from rebellion. I think it could also come from deep seeing and just feeling that was the response you wanted to take.
And that we'd have to find out for ourselves. Where do our responses come from? No one can tell me that. I have to look myself. And is there the clarity to see? No, there's no reactiveness. That is for each one of us. We can't tell each other that we're this or that, can we? I mean, we do. But to really see where a response is coming from needs insight here.
I was wondering when I heard that this definition, I don't know if I heard it all right, that religare for you is to be bound together, like to be enchained. Well, for me it has quite another meaning. It means to be bound together with all human beings and with God, God in quotation marks. That gives me just the space to give my hand to my neighbors. I would interpret it as connectedness. And so for me it's a wonderful word, to feel connected. That's for me to be religious. So I'm not worried about the word. And for God, when I said, well, we are also looking for God, that was just a symbol. I'm reading now several American books and just what they say about religion, different people. And I was surprised to find that people here are very liberal, the people I read, and they are just not drawing all the time lines between the God believers and the people who look for the ground of being, philosophy, and the others who look, I don't know, for the self, the true self, or the great self, the capital S. They are really so liberal. And I think one can perhaps talk just using this, what is already there here in America, to say, well, that's the way we are looking at everyone in his or her way.
Well, yeah, it seems like there's kind of separate discussions. Like, of course we want to be a religious organization from the point of view of the town of Springwater. But in terms of our own inner looking or something, the label might be at any moment a real hindrance or something, or just a label. And I guess all those things that about feeling that there's some correct dogma or something, I can see that in myself with regard to this work. I mean, at any given moment come up, that I have an idea about who's got it and who doesn't, and what's in it and what's out of it, and what's when I've got it and when I don't have it, and it seems like that tendency to create dogma or something isn't just out there.
I think it was the idea that we were any different from anybody else.
What did you...
What Joan was bringing up to me is somehow we have this idea that we're different from other people. But it comes down to this...
Who has this idea? That we're different from...
Let's say that I'm, at some level, operating from an assumption that I'm better than other people. That I am above what the fundamentalist Christians are getting wrapped up in, and it's not so. We're not different. We're all made of the same cloth.
Toni, do you have to believe in God to be religious? I come from a tradition, my parents for me personally, religion has been a way of life, a belief systems that you live in. And to me, someone can be very religious based on how they live, even though they may never believe in God. They don't need that, maybe. To me personally, I need to believe in God, to feel that life and this whole universe was not a random happening, that maybe there is some order and a reason behind things. But to you, is that necessary? What is religion? In fact, I've never looked it up in the dictionary, and now I will and give more thought to it. I guess I've just thought it's a way of living.
Probably depends also in what country's dictionary you look it up in. If you look it up in an Indian dictionary where the prevalent religion is Hinduism, it'll be different. If it's an English dictionary imported, then it'll reflect more the Western concepts and ideas. No, of course I don't say that you have to believe in God in order to be religious. You were mentioning Buddhism. I have heard Buddhists react to this thing of saying Buddhism is not a religion because there is no belief in God. So the statement then was Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. Theism being the belief in God, non-theism, no belief in God, but does not exclude one from the realm of religions. See, we come back to the question: what is living religiously? And you said something like, I live in accordance with my beliefs. Now, what are those beliefs? May I ask, or is that too much?
No, I guess I've drawn upon a lot of belief. Basically, I guess I might say that I believe that you do unto others as you would be done by, which is very much a part of the Christian belief. I believe that I think we are all, I don't know why I'm here, but being here.
On this earth?
Yes, on this earth. That my goal in life is to make life better for the people that I'm in touch with, to the best of my ability, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a professional, whatever, to bring some happiness, I guess. That's the core belief I live by. I don't know if it's part of any religion or that I ever do a good job of it, but at least I strive. And to me, I guess that's my religion.
Could I ask something? Because I'm interested. If just in one part of your day where something's happened, I don't know, maybe, well, I'm just going to carry on. And something's really upsetting, you get angry about something. What would you do how would you deal with that? Like, you mentioned that you'd like to think that you bring happiness or whatever, but then there's a moment where something happens and there's upset. What would happen?
That's an interesting question. I guess I've been a very lucky person until now, where on the whole my life has been a very happy one. I am learning though that I have run into and am running into situations where there is anger, frustration, sadness, and what is the best way to deal with it. And I think until now, to me, religion has been doing in a way of living, and I think what is I'm now starting to look at is this inquiry or listening and what role that plays in my life. And maybe that will help me deal better with it. I don't know that I have an answer. I know that I've tried not to retaliate or, hold a grudge. I try, but that's not always possible, or I don't think I've always been about it either.
So at the moment that hurt or anger or frustration arises and one becomes aware of it, then you say, maybe I need to look at it, or listen to it, or inquire into it.
And I do react, but maybe a couple of hours later, when things have quieted down, I can think about it a little better. And then, at sometimes I've even been able to apologize or say, I played a role in this. Not always, but sometimes.
I was just thinking quite often I think, feel that a person who is religious in some way is trying to model himself or his behavior. I know that was true for me, after some sort of ideal which I have in mind. In contrast, I was going to say, to this business of questioning, why are things going the way they're going for me?
You're saying that your idea of religiousness was to model yourself after an example, an idealistic example.
A slight variation in the wording.
Okay.
I had the idea that in being religious, I had to have some sort of an ideal which I was modeling myself after.
Which you say is not like inquiry.
Right. And that may be, I have a feeling that I'm not the only one who thought that way. I think that's quite widespread. In this business of questioning and trying to find out why I end up where I end up.
Is what?
Is a different approach.
I try to get back to what I did when I was a Christian. I'm still a Christian, and I wasn't a Christian. When I was at odds with someone, angry, or there was a situation, and it was really hard for everybody in it, for me, above all. Well, there was always the idealistic thought, but I put it in quotation marks, that Jesus wasn't like that, and that he wouldn't like that, what is going on now, me and someone else really fighting or something else, it's not all right. So that was only the background. I felt just the situation was unbearable. But then what one did, or I did, was to bring this in prayer before God, in the evening, in the morning. And that meant to be conscious of the situation, to take consciousness, to get into it, to be aware of what is going on, not to do as if there is nothing going on. You could call this being conscious of your sins, but it was not to be a sinner, but just because you couldn't live in this situation, you did it. And then one gets a little further in praying, I felt. And then in prayer also meant there was a moment you could say, dear God, you take it now for the night, I'm good, and have good rest. You take care of it. In the morning things have changed, or you will change it, or something of that kind. And I think that's not so far away from what we are doing here just now. For me, it's not so far away.
That is actually a neat way of thinking about prayer. Not so much worrying about or giving labels like sin, but to take time, 10 minutes at the beginning of the day and end of the day, to think about your actions through the day and bring some consciousness to it. It's a wonderful way of looking at it.
guess overall, I would agree with what Joan was saying, that as far as their Stu-called compartments is concerned, are we a religion? Well, close enough. I don't find that compartment particularly helpful or accurate to what I experience this to be, but that's something else I have to look at as well, because I have a real reaction to the word religion, and that characterization of me, of this, of what I'm up to as religious, the same as when somebody says I'm a Buddhist. There's a, no, I'm not. But at the same time, there's a pride in the label and the belonging to that, and that makes me special to most people. Because here, you're a rather rare flower if you're a Buddhist, whereas in other countries, it's the more common variety. But in terms of tax laws, I suppose. But I don't think that has any bearing for me on what this is about. Nor would I want there to be a whole lot of transfer between the two.
And still, I was very much involved at the time in leaving the Zen Center with what will we need to, how will we need to categorize ourselves as a new organization, whether there would even be one. Who knew? I don't know whether anybody would even want to leave with me and keep on working, but as it turned out, there were people. And conditions demanded that an organization be founded. But we were quite scrupulous in trying to not just invent some kind of a label, but have something that we could sort of have a good conscience about, not be deceptive. And the description or the term, a non-for-profit organization with religious purposes, I think this is what we came up with, felt we could live with. That was not deceptive or dishonest. But then you have to, and it's coming back up now since this question has been brought up, somebody can challenge it. What do you mean by being religious? And I'm not saying now somebody from the assessors or town board. I'm challenging myself. Because we do have, and it's an important ingredient of our existence, this term, this classification. Very important ingredient of our continued existence here. So are we deceiving ourselves or just reveling in definition? Or is there, Stu, you brought it up quite a while ago, is a religious mind in opposition to what's happening in society? And immediately as you said this, no, there's no opposition in this. Opposition, hostility, enmity, them versus us, no. And to understand the need for some tax paying, and to understand that, I'm talking right now, Kyle and myself on the hill, we appreciate those plows coming by and the dump being there to take our garbage. And we're quite willingly and happily paying our taxes for that. But is there any meaning whatsoever to use a word to refer to something that's real? And you brought up in the staff meeting, Stu, is cleaning toilets religious work? I think something like that you asked. And I wouldn't agree with just labeling, yeah, this is religious work, or no, but I want to, how do I clean the toilets? What's the state of mind? What am I doing? What's going on? Do I see myself as a toilet cleaner? Do I despise myself as one or elevate myself as one? What's going on? Or is the mind clear and free? And therefore the swooshing around is like the wind in the trees or the water splattering down the creek. Because the mind is open and is listening without reservation, without holding back or being tied up in knots over what I am or could be or shouldn't be and all of that kind of stuff.
I see a difference. There's one thing is if I myself, as I don't speak of you now, if I had to speak just with the people you will see soon, if I am quite reconciled to the word religious put as a label on this
I am too.
things going on, well, I don't see any problem coming up. And then the second thing is, if you want to give the taxes or not.
But that's a matter of being able to afford it.
Yes. And if
Without
you
raising a retreat fees to so high that people can't afford coming here anymore. Maybe, I don't know. This is again speculative. We don't
yes,
know.
But if you feel you can't afford it, I think really the thing is to say, yes, we are religious. We are religious. You don't know how religious we are.
Well, it's also
so ahead to explain what we are all doing.
As long as you say it.
See, I don't want to be hypocritical. I don't want to be dishonest. I want to speak from...
There's a paradox here for me, in that the question being asked, are you religious? The answer is already out there. That somehow I need to justify myself as being religious. That's the appropriate answer. Otherwise we get into this other thing. It's so hard. I feel like this has come, like I've been asked that kind of question with that answer already assumed. If I don't come up with that, like, yes, I am. Are you interested in this or not? The teacher will say to me, are you interested? And of course I have to be interested. And it's not really a question. It's like, all right, you're on the block, how can you justify yourself? It brings up such fear.
Yeah, but that's reaction and opposition or something. But it doesn't need to. You're not preoccupied with this, but somebody says...
That's right. And at the same time as that going on, this is a wonderful question. Am I religious? What is this religion? How does that influence me in making my life better? Or how does it make it worse? It's so many things.
It's not easy to give a yes/no answer, though.
Yeah.
That's what's being asked for. That's what I find
Yeah.
a little difficult.
You
But-
say you don't want to be a hypocrite.
Say it again.
She said she didn't want to be a hypocrite, or she didn't want to be hypocritical.
Yes. I may be, but it's not what I want to be. I want to do. Yeah.
It almost seems like we have to be hypocritical to live in society, because, as you said, even someone like Peace Pilgrim who walks out of the whole thing to probably
Who?
a very great degree. Someone like Peace Pilgrim who gives away all her material possessions, takes food only when it's offered to her, takes shelter only when it's offered to her, and does nothing but walk back and forth across the United States and Canada for 50 or 60 years, saying that she favors peace among human beings and talking to whoever will talk to her about it. Someone like that who takes even that radical step out of society, as you said earlier, alluded to earlier, I think, is still eating the food that is offered to her by people who do make the compromises, who do own the real estate and work the jobs and pay the taxes and make the compromises. And so it's very difficult. If we want to survive as Springwater Center, of course we want to prove we're a religious organization. And we can, make...
And there's nothing hypocritical about it, is there? And or if
No,
I take
in a
food...
sense, the way I understand the word religion, I see this as religious or spiritual. I don't have a particular charge around that word, and it's okay. But suddenly it's like we need to prove that that word fits us. And
Which if you don't go in and lie, what's hypocritical?
I'm sorry,
If you don't go in and tell lies, say, this guy, I think Toni said earlier, we don't know what the discussion's going to be. Stu said something like that, but you don't go in results oriented.
Or you have already ideas in mind that you're going to lie about or to try to deceive somebody.
But
But-
that the results are
what's
the most
needed.
important thing.
Yeah.
It's an open discussion.
Yes.
Where it's going to take.
And
is it? I mean, really, maybe it is for you. I don't know. But to me, I would go in definitely with the agenda that I wanted to convince them that we were a religious organization and I wanted to preserve our tax-exempt status. That would be my agenda, and I think I would try to accomplish that by, to whatever extent I was capable, being very open, quote unquote, listening to them. You know, I wouldn't think it would be very effective to try to ram it down their throat, but that I would definitely have that goal in mind. I wouldn't go in there just sort of like I wanted to hear what they thought about religion and what I thought
Of course
about
not.
it.
of course not. It's not the order of the day.
Right, so that's all I'm saying.
It's a hearing, but what's hypocritical about it?
for me, it still is a question. Are we religious or not? Am I religious or not? It's still
A moment-to-moment question, and also to be clear what the word really, is there a referent for this word? Is there something, and I maintain, yes, there is. There is something that this word refers to as far as I feel it, see it.
How much of a correspondence there is between that and what they're on about is something to find out.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's one thing to sit with them, to invite them here for discussion group on Sunday and to talk with them really openly. That means we are open, they are open. That's why they come. Then we can find out, are we religious or not in this ultimate sense. But I must say, when it's the question of money and taxes, I would do like you did, really say, I know that religion, really, who can say is religious? Nobody before God. Well, if you see really the ultimate reality or whatever, you couldn't say you are religious. You just can't say anything about yourself.
Okay.
Yes, of course. But to go to the tax driver, you just say you are religious. We are a religious community. We won't pay taxes.
We're not making products to sell or.
I mean,
We're not a business.
yes, we're not a business. We are not taking money profits here. We are not taking people out, as they say in German. So we have good conscience about it. We are religious.
And again, that's the difference between the question we're asking and the question that they may be asking, which is, the way you just put it, are you a business?
You what?
Are you a business? I mean, if what religious for them means is either you make money at what you're doing, which verges towards profit, non-profit, if that's what the question is, then the answer is simple enough. But I'm still not clear what their question is. We're sort of we're asking the question that is our question. But whether that, again, overlaps or corresponds to theirs, I'm not so sure.
No.
Or whether they're the same answer.
Well, as I know Christians rather well, I have a vague idea what they are like. It's true, it's a vague idea, it's an incorrect idea and everything. But I creep a little into their skins, and so I feel they won't wrong people here. They are not malicious, I think. But they have to find out if this here is religious, in the sense if you have the well-being of your soul, if this is your goal, or just to have a bag of money or something in the bank. And on this ground, one can tell them this and that. And saying freely we are religious.
Just to maybe it's helpful for people to hear that beyond anything we're discussing today or input, we do have a lawyer who's also a trustee who, from the moment he heard about this possibility guess I'm just trying to say that we're going about this in a way that, with his help, that it's not just going to come out of random discussions or whatever. There's a lot of effort being put into meeting the situation and in how best to address it and what would be helpful to bring along, who would be helpful to go to the meeting itself, as well as obtaining the actual credentials that they may be basing their judgment on and addressing that. So there's a lot of stuff going on, sort of behind the scenes, so to speak. So I just thought it's really, because I don't want people to necessarily assume, because you come to a meeting like this and you discuss this for a little while and you go off and it's like, you maybe just wonder what's going on. We just now walk into this meeting or something, but there's a
What
lot.
are they actually going to say? Yeah.
Huh?
What are the people we're debating about what's actually going to be said, what's going to happen?
Yeah,
Questions.
well, what is happening about it?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to convey, that there's a lot of background stuff going on in the background, so to speak. I'll be delivering a bunch of books and materials to Paul tomorrow that he'll go through, that refer to Toni in a way that puts it in a light, the larger picture of religion. So there's a lot of research and all.
Did anybody want to say something who hasn't had a chance?
We don't know as yet what guidelines the town itself is using to define religion, do we?
No.
Well, in terms of for tax exemption, they're sending us they're sending Paul actually a copy.
But we don't know it yet, that's what you're saying.
We
Yeah.
don't know specifically ourselves.
Because I think we're satisfied in our own minds that what we do here is of a religious nature, as we define religion. However, I'm wondering how we would feel about going to the town and finding that their definition of a religion is a body that holds regular ceremonies, has a written doctrine, has people formally join it with some ceremony going on. And in that case, it seems that there will have to be some communication opened up and some discussion of the definition of religion. And that, it seems to me, it's going to fall into more of an educational area and a communication area. I just wonder if we may not be trying to go in there with the hope of sort of imposing our definition of religion on them, and maybe not too much openness there to hear what it is, where they're coming from.
I think we're going to have to be very sensitive to where they're coming from.
We've already talked about this at length, yeah.
And a lot of what you're talking about, I think, will come up in the meeting we have, whether it's Tuesday night or this week, where people involved in going there are going to talk about how to receive the laws.
No, I'm very interested to hear what is in their minds.
But I think perhaps they might have already heard that Zen has not rituals and ceremonies and baptism and these things as Christians have. So the difference there, and there are also Christian groups which put away with many of these things. The Quakers, for instance, I don't see it now all for Quakers it's necessary to be a Quaker, but there are many low churches, free churches, which have not so much ritual and ceremonies, that they are also recognized by the state. So one should really see what they bring up to say there are points of reference also in Christianity that you can believe without all of this and that.
Is someone else would like to say something?
So it seems that one of the messages or elements of this is an opportunity or offering chance to in fact connect with these people that we are connected to. And we ourselves perceive some obstacles that may or may not be there. And perhaps they also perceive some obstacles. So that seems to me a, in fact, truly religious thing to do. To meet with them, and not just in this meeting, but I don't know, think about other ways
We've thought about that too.
that can continue being enhanced.
But if to continue to be tax exempt, we have to call this a Zen center, I say we need another meeting. That's like that to me would be a step that.
You mean if we would have to go back to calling ourselves a Zen center in order to remain tax exempt?
Exactly, yeah. How far are we willing to go to meet their definition in order for it to be tax exempt? Not very far, I would say.
Including something was brought up to me, go easy right now in talking about this, don't put things down or so, and I felt, wait a minute, I left the center in order to be able to talk freely. I don't want to relive my youth in Germany and say what I need to say and open it up to discussion and listen. And that I will not go back to, and if we go under, because we can't continue living here, then so be it, but not shirk from discussing and talking openly what we feel needs to be said or examined.
I think the concern was how you were going to approach the people you were talking about.
In the meeting.
Yeah, and town officials. And
Not...
who are working out of a bureaucratic, compartmentalized way of dealing with things, and whether that was something that you would be sensitive to.
And believe me, there is such sensitivity here to that, much more than in any of you Americans, having lived really, truly.
I'm interested in looking at this whole situation in a very practical light. I think for us to have a discussion about what religion is and how we see ourselves as religious is a wonderful thing to talk about. But in my mind, from hearing what I've heard today, I don't feel that people, the supervisors or the tax people in Springwater are really curious or asking these kinds of questions that we're asking here. And you say, well, you wonder where they're coming from. There's no question where they're coming from. They want their tax money. And, they may have an idea in their mind, we need more money for our schools, for our children, and here's this group that may have the express. What else could it be? They want tax money, and they want to find out if this institution fits the letter of the law. And so I would not, for myself, want to engage in any deep discussion about what religion is. If they were curious, they'd come up here, and many people did on the pancake breakfast come up here from town to see what's going on here. So I think it would be quite dangerous to open this up to the kind of discussion we have here with people who are not really interested in things.
You never know. An interest may suddenly... who knows? Kyle made an appointment for me the other day at a dermatologist, and the secretary said, I want to meet her. Is she Toni Packer Krishnamurti? So she's heard about it. So somebody may, who knows? People come here from all walks of life. I wouldn't preclude this lack of interest. Of course, interest in tax money is great. This is a very poor community, judging by the high tax rate on residences. So, of course, they need to have all the revenue they can get. And I wish we could donate it to them. I really do. So that the community thrives. But we also have people who come to retreat who can't afford very high retreat fees. And the staff gets minimal stipends. So, but I agree with you, that's not the place. That's why this was chosen. And I think it's good for us to move these things in our minds and hearts, these questions. But what will happen there, I don't know. And this is, since I will be one of the people who will be there, I will enter not knowing what's going to happen and come from that. Not have preconceived ideas. Of course, they may pop up, but that's not listening. Listening is free of preconceived ideas, even though the memory may throw it in every once in a while. Sometimes it may be helpful to heed also what the memory says, but not to be overrun by it. And obviously the question of why did you change your name is something that maybe needs to be explained, because that was one of the elements, wasn't it, that brought about the... Yeah. And whenever I meet someone here and say that I work at the Springwater Center, it's almost immediately come, oh, the Zen Center, the Zens. This is how we're known here. And then, of course, with things happening, this is speculation again, but also putting oneself in the shoes of things. There has been this whole Waco disaster and all kinds of spiritual communities doing all kinds of things. Of course it comes up in people's minds what's going on up there on the hill. Now you say people could come here, but there's a certain shyness to come. So who said this? Did you? A road which says private road and Center for Meditative Inquiry. And I don't go, I'm shy myself, I don't go to town meetings, and why not? Well, time is rare, but the one time that we did go to the town meeting, before we even consummated this deal here of buying the place, or had we bought it already? I think maybe we had bought it. We wanted to meet them, and they were very happy and very pleased that they were almost honored that we would come from Rochester and want to meet them. And we thought we would be asked, do you believe in God? And instead their main concern was, are you going to buy up more real estate and take it off the tax roll? Yeah. And we assured them that we had hardly enough money to buy this real estate, and that we would sell some land where people would buy houses which would generate revenue for Springwater. At which point we were told that the revenue would be counteracted by keeping Marrowback Road, opening it back up. It was closed at the time. So, but we were nice to each other and were pleased in each other's presence, but that's the only time I was down there. And so I can't say to anybody, why don't you come up here? I also haven't gone. And there is a certain inherent shyness in me to be, you'd say, you are shy, you're talking in front of people, but that's different. So if there is a movement here among staff to go more to town meetings, I would really welcome it. And if somebody says, well, don't you just talk about it, but you come too, well, then I'll also go. That, who said, you said this, or you? The best thing would be, you said that, to meet each other more. Do you go to the town board?
No. I connect with people in my work. I don't go to the meetings. I'm also struck by there's such a richness of things that occur. One is this fear and reluctance to meet each other. And another is perhaps what has been mentioned in terms of a lot of thought about religion from very different and sometimes liberal understandings. It's a real richness to encompassing and a legal kind of opening to it. It's part of the country. It's part of what we have, and that's embracing, really. And there's not really a question in my mind that this type of thing is a religious approach in the way that it's actually understood by the people that think most deeply about it. And I think that the laws and all this kind of stuff is actually very supportive.
Very supportive of allowing religions to flower, or yeah.
I mean, it's amazing in this country compared to a lot of places.
We've gone over our time, so maybe we want to...
Is there anyone else who needed to say something? Didn't have a chance because of the eager speakers?